Hi, Assalamualaikum. Today we will learn about there was or there wasn't and there were or there weren't. Let's learn some vocabulary. Shopping center, shopping center. Cinema, cinema. Small shop, small shop. Theater, theater. Carriage, carriage. Noisy, noisy. Quiet, quiet. We will learn how to use or when we use there was or there wasn't and there were or there weren't in the sentences given. Now, let's learn how to use the phrases there was or there wasn't and there were or there weren't with countable nouns. Let's look at the positive form. There was and there weren't. First, let's look at the phrase there was. Remember, we use there was with singular nouns. Singular nouns means only one. For example, only one bus, singular noun. So, we need to use the phrase there was. There was only one bus. Next, a toy shop, singular noun. So we use there was. There was a toy shop. Now, let's look at the phrase there were. Remember, we use there were with plural nouns. Plural nouns means more than one. For example, many carriages, plural noun. So, we use there were. There were many carriages. Next, shops, plural noun. So, we use there were. There were shops. Now, let's look at the negative form there wasn't and there weren't. There wasn't and there weren't bermaksud tiada or tidak ada. First, let's look at the phrase there wasn't. Remember, we use there wasn't with singular nouns. For example, a shopping center, singular noun. So we use the phrase there wasn't. There wasn't a shopping center. Next, any cinema, singular noun. So we use there wasn't. There wasn't any cinema. Let's look at the phrase there weren't. Remember, we use there weren't with the plural nouns. For example, number 1. A lot of bikes, plural noun. So, we use there weren't. There weren't a lot of bikes. Next, many cars, plural noun. So, we use there weren't. There weren't many cars. Let's look at the examples. There was a cinema. There wasn't a cinema. There were cinemas. There weren't cinemas. There was a car. There wasn't a car. There were carriages. There weren't carriages.
Social Studies.
A city from the past.
1.
This is a picture of New York City in the year 1900. It was very different then. There weren't any shopping centres or cinemas, but there were shops and theatres.
2.
There weren't many cars back then, but there were lots of horses and carriages. The streets of New York City weren't quiet. They were noisy and full of people, just like today.
Let's do the exercises in Workbook page 62. Activity 1. Read the instruction. Which one was Mr. Miller's town 80 years ago? Now, let's read. 80 years ago, there weren't any shopping centers in my town. There were only small shops. There weren't many cars, but there were lots of bikes. The streets were quiet. Sometimes there were police officers on horses. There were 2 theaters, but there weren't any cinemas. Now, let's choose one picture according to the text. 80 years ago, there weren't any shopping centers in my town. So look at the picture. No shopping center here. Okay. There were only small shops. There weren't many cars, but there were lots of bikes. Sometimes there were police officers on horses. There were 2 theaters, but there weren't any cinemas. Now, which one is Mr. Miller's town? Yes, the third picture. Activity 2. Read the instruction. Look at the picture of this town from the year 1900 and write. First, let's read the answers given. Was, quiet, carriages, weren't, were, cars. Now, look at the picture. Now let's read. In the year 1900, the streets blank noisy. There were blank. There weren't any blank, but there were horses and blank. There blank a few shops and there blank a theater too. Now, let's fill in the blank with the correct answer. In the year 1900, the streets blank noisy. So, which one the correct answer? Yes, weren't. In the year 1900, the streets weren't noisy. They were blank. So, which one? They were quiet. There weren't any blank, but there were horses and blank. Okay, which one the correct answer? Cars and carriages. There weren't any cars, but there were horses and carriages. For number 5 and 6, try to do it yourself.
Thank you for watching. Bye.